This video is brought to you by MagicJank.com, the spiciest cards for your sauciest decks. Buy and sell Magic the Gathering products and gear today on MagicJank.com. What is up, Janksters? It's your boy Graham, also known as HamHawks42 on the internet, and today we're doing spoilers. Believe it or not, we like to cover spoilers around here, and we have a new set coming out next month, The Brothers War, and spoiler season has officially begun. We've seen about a day and a half's worth of spoilers as of this recording, and I'm excited to jump into them. I'm not going to be going through every single card, just because we've seen quite a few, but I'm going to cover the highlights and give you kind of my impressions, what kind of decks I expect to see those cards in, and just how good they are in general. Like, how likely are we to see them in various formats? Because that's kind of what we're all trying to figure out at this point, right? I'm going to start with the reprints, actually, and one of them, I gotta say, is pretty darn sweet, and that is Monastery Swiftspear. Monastery Swiftspear is a 1/2 with haste for 1. That alone, pretty good, right? Like, it's not bad in a mono red deck, but it also has prowess, which means whenever you cast a non-creature spell, the creature gets +1/+1 till end of turn. So if you throw down Swiftspear on 1, swing, boom, 1 damage. Your opponent may not have even drawn their first card yet. Awesome. You're doing the thing. Turn 2, you lightning strike their face. So you've dealt 1 damage to them already, 19. Lightning strike, you hit them for 3, puts them down to 16. Monastery Swiftspear is now a 2/3 that you're swinging in. All of a sudden, that comes down to what, 14 on turn 2? And it only gets better from there. You make it like play with fires, double thing, like it gets so much better. And on top of that, prowess is whenever you cast a non-creature spell, it's not just instants or sorceries. It's all non-creature spells. So if you have a Kumano Faces Kakazan in your hand, you can save it till turn 2. You can play Monastery Swiftspear on 1, crack in, play Kumano Faces Kakazan and a Play with Fire on turn 3, all of a sudden, or on turn 2 rather, all of a sudden this thing gets +2/+2 till end of turn. In addition to all the damage you're dealing with those other spells. Mono red is going to be in an amazing spot with this, no question. And we also have other prowess enablers and other kind of cheap spells going on. Like, we have a lot of blue cards that care about, you know, spells in your graveyard, that kind of thing, where prowess absolutely fits. Gaea, Fire Negotiator, produces prowess tokens. So that's going to be a thing. So I'm excited. This is a great card. It was also funny, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, when the Explorer Anthology came out, a ton of people on social media were like, we need Elvish Mystic and we need Monastery Swiftspear. If we can get those two, we're making real strides towards making Explorer Pioneer. And, you know, when Elvish Mystic showed up, a lot of people were like, all right, cool. Like, this is good. You know, Mausoleum Wanderer, that kind of thing. Okay, good. Like, we got a couple of good pieces, but where's Monastery Swiftspear? Like, that was the one thing everybody was saying. It's like, well, Wizards had plans. They knew what was coming. So we got it. It's here, Monastery Swiftspear. Red decks, Spellslinger decks, strap in. Also, anybody who wants to play Control, good luck. Because there's going to be a lot of heat coming really fast. All right. Next up, we have Blast Zone. This is a card that I believe was introduced in War of the Spark, if I'm not mistaken. It is a land, enters the battlefield with a charge counter on it. You can tap it for a colorless, and it enters untapped. Note, which is very, very good. You can pay double X, tap, put X charge counters on Blast Zone, and you can pay 3 tap, sack Blast Zone, destroy each non-land permanent with mana value equal to the number of charge counters on Blast Zone. I have found in my experience this card is good as a utility land in colorless decks or monocolor decks, but in 60 card formats like Explorer, Standard, etc., I find it's awfully slow. So I would be very surprised if this sees play in an individual, you know, in those formats. Like, if this sees Standard play, I'll be surprised. That said, as like a one-of in a deck that cares about Power Stones, this thing could be amazing. Now, if you're not familiar with Power Stones, they are a new type of token that you can create that it's similar. It's the same thing that Karn Living Legacy produces with the +1, where you create a Power Stone token that can tap for any abilities or artifact spells. You know, basically you can use the mana for anything other than an artifact spell or a non-artifact spell. So you can cast artifacts, you can pump mana into stuff like this. And one of the biggest issues with Blast Zone is getting enough mana to putting meaningful number of charge counters on it. Because in that situation, in order to get like a semi-decent board wipe that has some flexibility, you have to invest a ton of mana. Like an absolute ton, because not only do you have to pay the double, you have to pay X twice for each time you want to put charge counters on it, but you also have to pay 3 to activate it, and you're tapping it as well. So it's a land that you're already tapping for, or that you're having to tap, so you can't use the mana that it generates to help pump it up. So it's expensive and it's slow, but this set, if Power Stones are successful, could be a really cool place for it. And also, given the devastation that the brothers wrought on Dominaria, a card named Blast Zone is pretty fitting, I think. All right, so next up, we have Mishra, Tamer of Makfawa. Now, it's interesting. Mishra and Urza are the 2 main characters of the Brothers' War. They're the titular brothers. And as a result, they appear in the set a number of times. The face cards for the commander decks are both Urza and Mishra. There are legendary meld cards that are both Urza and Mishra that kind of tell the story of how they've ascend into kind of their final form that they take during the Brothers' War. In the case of Urza, it becomes a Planeswalker. In the case of Mishra, it becomes fully taken over by the Phyrexians. And so that's a mythic. Those are mythics that are in the set. Cool. That combined with a rare, if I'm not mistaken. But in any event, we also have these rare versions of Mishra and Urza, which are pretty cool. And then there are even uncommon versions that they spoiled as well, which are monocolored versions that are like them as kids. So that's kind of in their younger days when they were like first kind of really diving into Artifice and when they were still on decent terms, I believe. Anyway, I'm sure there was always rivalry, but I don't know the lore as well as I don't know lore well enough to be talking about it. Let me get into the cards. Mishra, Tamer of Makfawa. 4/4 for 3 black red legendary creature human artificer. Permanents you control have ward, sacrifice a permanent. Each artifact card in your graveyard has unearth 1 black red. Awesome. Freaking awesome. Being able to effectively flash back your artifacts for 3 is amazing. And then on top of that, giving all of your permanents ward. If you have any means by which to protect your board, like if anything is giving you the means by which to protect your entire board, it's awesome. Forcing your opponent to sacrifice a permanent every single time they want to touch one of your things is amazing. Like the possibilities there are really freaking high. So decks that care about individual spot removal, they're going to get shafted pretty hard, because a lot of those decks, like a lot of the control decks, what they're trying to do is win with card advantage by getting more cards on the battlefield and more cards in hand than the opponent as they slowly grind out the opponent's reserves. And now this card directly counteracts that, because if you have a Fateful Absence, if you have a Fading Hope, if you want to manipulate my stuff, you have to give up one of the cards you've already played. And that can be a creature, that can be an enchantment, it can be whatever. And you may have expendable tokens or whatever lying around, but it's going to force the person to deal with that. That's big. Like it just is. Like so it's cool. I like this card. I think it's very powerful. And also that unearth ability is going to be really potent. Anytime you get access to cards in your graveyard, it's going to be good. It's funny actually. So we have unearth, which if I'm not mistaken, when you unearth a creature, it gains haste and then you exile it at the end of the turn, if it leaves the battlefield. So, but you play it from your graveyard for its unearth cost, and then you get it for a turn, and then it's gone. Is the idea. So it's interesting. People say that all mechanics are kicker. That's not exactly true. There are 2 different types of mechanics. I think either you have kicker or you have flashback, and unearth is the flashback variant that we're getting in this set. And we are getting a kicker variant, which we will be getting to a little bit later. But I'd be remiss if we take a minute to talk about Mishra, and we don't take another second to talk about Urza, Prince of Karug, for 2 white blue. Is a 2/3 human artificer. Artifact creatures you control get +2/+2. And you can pay 6. Create a token that's a copy of target artifact you control, except it's a 1/1 soldier creature in addition to its other types. Which is interesting. Now, it does create, the token is a 1/1. However, if Urza is on the battlefield, it's a 3/3 because it's an artifact creature. So it'll be getting the +2/+2. So that's pretty cool. This also gives you the ability to create copies of artifacts that have unique and weird abilities. So I have a feeling this is going to get cracked open at some point. Now, the activation cost is very expensive, and the stats on this creature are frankly very bad. It's a 2/3 for 4. You know, that's not good. But it functions as a lord for your artifact creatures by giving them all +2/+2. So if artifact creatures are strong, if there are ways to ramp with Power Stone while building an army of artifact creatures, Urza's going to be great. If that's a function, if the mechanics line up to allow you to create that kind of a play pattern, then yes, Urza is going to fit very, very nicely in that. However, if you can't, then I don't see this card making any waves. Like, I'll be surprised if this card actually makes it in standard. I would. Whereas the Mishra that we just talked about, I can see some decks wanting that. It's still a 5-drop, so okay, but like, I can imagine it. Urza, I don't know. The artifact creatures in the set need to be really freaking good for Urza Prince of Krug to really stand up. Maybe though. Maybe. We'll see. All right. Now, next up, we have a Planeswalker who is potentially bananas. And that is Teferi, Temporal Pilgrim. This is a 4 starting loyalty legendary Planeswalker Teferi for 3 blue. Whenever you draw a card, put a loyalty counter on Teferi, Temporal Pilgrim. And you can pay 0 loyalty to draw a card. So that's effectively a +1. Sweet. -2, create a 2/2 blue spirit creature token with vigilance, and whenever you draw a card, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. And then -12, target opponent chooses a permanent they control and returns it to its owner's hand. Then they shuffle each non-land permanent they control into its owner's library. So that does remove every single permanent off the battlefield for your opponent. It is target opponent, so in multiplayer matches, you're not going to be able to like wipe an entire EDH pod with this. But my goodness, in EDH, this card is going to be a menace. I think it's just kill on sight. Like, it's just that simple. In EDH, this is the kill on sight commander kill on sight, not commander. Thank goodness, but a kill on sight planeswalker. Which fortunately, planeswalkers are relatively easy to deal with in commander. But the reason I cite that specifically is because there are a lot of ways to draw a lot of cards in that format, and everybody's drawing cards. Like, if you have a Consecrated Sphinx down, and it's a very Temporal Pilgrim, pass the turn around the table, you're gonna ult it next turn, probably. Like, that's insane. Like, straight up insane. And I think that is gonna happen. Because what it's doing is, in that case, you take one of your opponents, and you say, hey, all the stuff that you just built up, everything you've got, you are welcome to put one of them into your hand, and the rest, you shuffle them back in. Straight up reset, including the lands. That is savage. It's absolutely savage. Like, it's just like, that's -12, target player loses the game. Like, that is what it says. Now, for the record, I'm totally cool with planeswalkers having ultimates that say target player lose the game. I don't mind that, and this one is difficult to reach, but in the right archetype, you could totally do it. You know, and this is going to be a control planeswalker that we are definitely going to see. There are going to be people trying to make this work in standard, trying to make this work in Explorer. In like Explorer and Historic, I can totally see the current Azorius control deck that is running like 3 or 4 Teferi Hero of Dominarias, slotting a couple of these in there too, as an additional way to help with that. But also, more importantly, that -12 is like game breaking, but you have to draw 8 cards, including the one that you get off the 0. But still, you have to draw 8 cards before you be able to access that, and that's assuming Teferi doesn't take any damage. So that is going to not happen often. Like, it's just not. Unless you're playing in Historic with Oracle of the Alpha and you hit this in a Time Twister, then sky's the limit. Go nuts. But in general, that's going to be very, very difficult to pull off. So we probably shouldn't judge planeswalkers by their ultimates. However, the -2, let's take a look at that -2. You create a 2/2 blue spirit creature token with vigilance, and whenever you draw a card, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. That's a finisher. That's a massive finisher, because these decks want to be drawing cards anyway. We already have cards like Thirst for Discovery in the format, where you draw 3 cards, then discard a basic land or 2 other cards. Like, that fits in this perfectly. Consider even like good old-fashioned opt if you're in an older format that's legal. Like, they all just fuel this by doing what you were gonna do anyway. So now it's important to note, cards that put a card into your hand don't work with this. So cards like Memory Deluge or Expressive Iteration, if you're somehow playing in a format where that's still legal, those cards, put them into your hand, you don't technically draw them. So as a result, you don't get a trigger off this. So that's important to note, be aware of that. It's also going to be very interesting to see people try to make this work in a standard format where Sheoldred, the Apocalypse, still exists. Because Sheoldred shuts this guy down so hard it's not even funny. Because for every 1 loyalty counter you get on Teferi, you take 2 damage or you lose 2 life from Sheoldred. So I think Shelly's not going anywhere. That card is going to remain dominant, and I have a feeling as long as Sheldred remains dominant, Teferi's not going to see much play. If that shifts, though, if that power dynamic changes, and Sheldred kind of falls out of favor, which I don't see happening anytime soon, like and nothing short of a ban I think is going to do that, but if it does, then Temporal Pilgrim has a shot. Yeah, I think in Standard right now there isn't a home for this guy, but if there's ever a top-end massive Planeswalker finisher that a control deck needs, it's this. Like, this is really good. Yeah, like, don't sleep on this. I think this is, like, shockingly good. All right. Next up, so I mentioned Kicker. We have Kicker. So we have a new ability. It's not technically Kicker. It's Prototype, but come on, it's Kicker. All right. So the new Kicker in this set is Prototype, and the card that we're looking at here that they spoiled so far is a Mythic. Thank goodness, because this thing's insane. It is a 7-drop Phyrexian Worm artifact creature. Now it is an artifact creature. Power Stone mana can be pumped into it. Awesome, and it has 2 separate costs. So the way that it works is, if you play it for its prototype cost, which in this case is 1 black, you get a smaller body on a creature that still has all the abilities. So in the case of Phyrexian Fleshgorger, if you pay the prototype cost, it is 1 black for a 3/3. Now, no matter which version you play, you get all the other abilities. So this creature will have Menace, Lifelink, and Ward. Pay life equal to Phyrexian Fleshgorger's power. So the Ward is not mana, which is good. But at the end of the day, like, that could be a lot of life. So if you do have a 3/3, so if you pay the prototype cost, 1 black, you get a 3/3 Menace Lifelinker with Ward, where they have to pay life equal to 3. So they have to pay 3 life if they're gonna kill it. Great card, like, just really solid. On its face, that is a 3-drop. Awesome. If you're in like a mono black aggro kind of situation, that's exactly where you want to be. Let's go. Like, that thing's great. Or in any kind of mid-range shell, you can do a lot with that. And Prototype gives you flexibility, because if you don't want to play the prototype cost, you pay the main casting cost, and it becomes a 7/5 Menace Lifelink with Ward, pay 7 life. That becomes incredible, because it's very difficult to deal with, and it's freaking huge. The other interaction with these that is critical is, much like double-faced cards, or cards that like transform, you know, well, double-faced, I guess, is, yeah, double-faced cards that aren't day-bound. So if you're looking at your Reflections of Kiki-Jikis, your Okagachi, maybe Manifest, all that jazz, if you blink it, it enters with its primary power and toughness. So with the double-faced cards, no matter which side you cast it on, no matter which side you put it down, if it blinks, it comes back as the front face, whatever that is. So if you have, you know, a Kiki-Jiki down, the Reflection of Kiki-Jiki, and your opponent bounces it, or you like flicker it with some kind of effect, it then becomes the Fable of the Mirror Breaker again, and it goes through the steps. If you have like a land in play, for example, that like one of the MDFCs, like a Kazundu Mammoth in play, and for some reason, somehow you blink the land, it will become a 3/3. The 3/3 Mammoth will enter onto the battlefield. I'm sure there are better examples, but in any event, that's just how it works with like modal double face cards. Well, it's also how it works with Prototype, and the primary power and toughness is the bigger one. So if you, for 3, get this 3/3 Menace Lifelinker, all right, fine, cool creature, whatever. You swing with it the next turn, presumably, because they may not have, if they don't have any blockers. Like, if you have a clean attack, go ahead and get 3 damage, gain 3 life, great. And then you hit it with a Planar Incision, blink it, and it comes back into play as a 7/5, and that gives with a +1/+1 counter on it, which is just nice. So now you have a 7/5 Menace Lifelinker that's also untapped all of a sudden. Like, that's going to be a problem. Like, we're going to see Dimir decks doing that. I guarantee it. This card is incredible. Like, this card is very strong. It's also pretty straightforward. It's like big artifact creature with Menace and Lifelink. So just big dumb thing, which is great. I love big dumb things. I'm glad that they're embracing big dumb things. In this case, too, it's kind of neat, because if you're going to do the prototype cost, you have to have black mana. So the card encourages you to run black mana, but you don't have to, because the main casting cost on this one is 7, colorless. With no mana, you know, no colored pips in its casting cost. So that's kind of neat. Like, you could put it in any color deck, theoretically, but if you do, you're going to be paying 7. If you have black, all of a sudden you could pay as little as 3, and that flexibility is great. It's also good, you know, it just gives you better options. If it's good in the early game, if you can get the prototype down. It's good in the late game if you don't. Sweet. I have a feeling the other prototype cards are not going to be quite this strong. I think they're leading off with a bang. But this is when they described the mechanic on the Wizards videos, they did specifically say the creatures are smaller if you pay the prototype cost, and they come in bigger if you don't. So, which also makes sense. The idea of like the prototype being the earlier version, and then the next one being like bigger and better. So it'll be very interesting to see what other cards we see with prototype. But yeah, Phyrexian Fleshgorger, this thing's very powerful. I don't know what else to say. It's just, yeah, it's good. All right, next up, we have Titania, Voice of Gaea. This is a 3/4 with reach for 1 green legendary creature elemental. Already great. Whenever 1 or more land cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, you gain 2 life. We have the sack lands from Streets of New Capenna. We have Evolving Wilds. All still standard legal. Just throw that out there. At the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 4 or more land cards in your graveyard and you both own and control Titania, Voice of Gaea, and a land named Yawgmoth, Sanctum of Nature, exile them, they meld into Titania, Gaea Incarnate. That's right, this is the 3rd meld card that Wizards spoiled. So we're gonna definitely get into that. Don't worry, I'm gonna show you Titania, Gaea Incarnate. It's pretty cool. But, so that's Titania, Voice of Gaea, or Titania, or however the heck you pronounce it. I saw a Shakespeare production of Midsummer Night's Dream where they pronounced it Titania. I assume they know what they're talking about. So anyway, yeah, Titania, Voice of Gaea, really cool stuff. It's good on rate, 3/4 for 3 with reach. Powerful card, decent, and when lands are going into your graveyard, just gain in life. That could be very meaningful. If you're going up against any kind of way, or if you're going up against an opponent who's trying to, like, you know, aggro you out, this card's awesome because it just puts a stop sign in front of a lot of their attacks, but just being big and having reach. But then it also can gain you life if you're putting cards into your graveyard as a part of your strategy. And in older formats where you have access to things like Crucible of Worlds or Ramaneb Excavator that allow you to cast cards out of your graveyard, that can get out of hand real fast, and that's nice. I like that. The other thing that this does, the other card, actually, that is legal in Standard right now, that would be remiss if I didn't mention, is Splendid Reclamation. If you're not familiar, Splendid Reclamation is a sorcery that allows you to take all the cards from your graveyard and put them out of the battlefield. So Splendid Reclamation, Titania, fetch lands, like I was mentioning, like those little sack lands that go and fetch other lands, could be really great. This also, it can also fit really nicely with Soul of Windgrace. Like, there's a lot of lands matter stuff going on in Standard right now, and Titania fits really nicely. And if you're in older formats, get Trug Monster. Just do get Trug Monster. It's great. All right, so that's Titania, Voice of Gaea. The land that she melds with is Yawgmoth, Sanctum of Nature. It enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a legendary green creature. So that's kind of fun. If you have Titania or another creature like Titania, then it is untapped, ready to go. It's neat. I like that. And it taps to add a green. Surprise, surprise. You can also pay 2 green, tap, create a 2/2 green bear creature token, then mill 3 cards. Activate only as a sorcery. So that's actually kind of cool. You can mill yourself, fill your graveyard. So again, if you're trying to get lands into your graveyard, boom, Sanctum of Nature is going to help you do that. And in the process, it also just kind of poops out a bear that can block for you. Cool. Like, it's just good. And then on your upkeep, if you happen to have Yawgmoth and you happen to have Titania, boom, they merge, or they meld, sorry, which is awesome. Also, very important note, Wizards has done something where they have included some, in Kamigawa, they had lands that were legendary. Now, like, them being legendary was a big downside. Now, Yawgmoth, Sanctum of Nature, is clearly a single location, like a named location on a planet, so it being legendary would make sense, but it's not. So you can actually get multiple copies of Yawgmoth and just run them out and have just a bunch of Yawgmoths, which is nice. Like, you can run 4 of. In a deck with Titania where you really want to make the meld happen, you can run 4 of these and have no problem. So that's pretty sweet. I like that. And then finally, Titania, Gaea Incarnate. Now, on this screen, you'll notice actually it looks a little funny because it is actually 2 separate cards. If you're not familiar with meld, the way it works is when the front, or when you meld 2 cards together, you actually flip them over and the back side is half the card and they merge together to form one giant creature that is literally twice the size of a normal Magic card on the battlefield. Kind of cool. And Titania, Gaea Incarnate is the green meld. And it is a star with Vigilance, Reach, Trample, and Haste. Woof. Titania, Gaea Incarnate's power and toughness are each equal to the number of lands you control. When Titania enters the battlefield, return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. All right, so here I was talking about Splendid Reclamation. She's just got it. She just does it on her own. Then you can pay 4, put 4 +1/+1 counters on target land you control. It becomes a 0/0 elemental creature with haste. It's still a land. Awesome. This is absolutely awesome. I think this is sweet. I'm 100% gonna be playing with this. Like a ton. A ton. If you've been watching any of my streams, you know that I've been having a ton of fun with Tatiova recently. I think it's a really fun card, but it's capable of doing a lot of crazy things. This, like Titania Gaea Incarnate with Tatiova, Steward of Tides, is going to get out of hand. Like straight up out of hand. The number of lands entering the battlefield are going to be savage with this. Like it's going to pop off like crazy. Because the meld creatures that you're looking for, or the meld components that you need here to get this creature on the battlefield is you need 4 lands in your graveyard that get there one way or another. We have the channel lands, we have the fetch lands. So that's not hard. Like even in standard, that's not going to be hard to do. And it's a 3-drop and a land. You need a 3-drop, a land, and 4 lands in the bin. That's doable. That's very doable. So I think this with Titania Steward of Tides or Soul of Windgrace. I think those are going to be the 2 different archetypes that people are going to try to build around this. And I wouldn't be surprised if one of them pops off. To be honest, as far as competitive goes, I would put my money on Jund with Soul of Windgrace because that card is just bonkers. It's just good value no matter what kind of situation you're in the game. Whereas Tatiova, yeah, is more of a build around, so more specific. But one's a mythic, one's an uncommon. What do you expect? In any event, Titania, Gaea Incarnate, it's massive. It's got Vigilance, Reach, Trample, and Haste. Like the questing beast special. It doesn't have Death Touch, but it does actually have Reach, so that's nice. In any event, super cool. I think this card is great. Yeah, so Voice of Gaia, Titania Voice of Gaia, Argoth, Sanctum of Nature. You've got an efficiently costed good green creature. You have a land, you have a good utility land that fits a mono green strategy or even multicolor strategies just fine. And then you have just a massive chonker that is the perfect payoff for the setup you've been doing. Priceless. They got it right. All right. Next up, we have a couple more cards left. One of which is going to be one that I'm definitely going to be trying to build around, and that is Gix, Yawgmoth Praetor. It is a 3/3 for 1 black. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to one of your opponents, its controller may pay 1 life. If they do, they draw a card. So you're drawing cards. Drawing cards is the name of the game, baby. This is also going to be upticking that Tef we talked about earlier. Just throwing that out there. So that's fantastic. This is like kind of mono black Toski, except in proper fashion with mono black, you have to pay life to draw the cards. But unfortunately, it's a May. You don't have to. So if you're in a position where your life total is very low, it's been a real big slugfest, and you just need to go in for the kill or just like need to deal a decent amount of damage to your opponent, but you can't afford the life loss, you don't have to. You don't have to take it, and that's okay, which is good. But that's just where this starts. We already have a 3/3 for 3 in mono black, which frankly is already like the strongest color. Well, it's possibly the strongest single color in standard right now. Although fortunately with the Meat Hook ban, that's up for debate, which I'm really grateful for. In any event. And you get this cool Toski ability. But wait, there's more. 4 black. Discard X cards. Exile the top X cards of target opponent's library. You may play lands and cast spells from among cards exiled this way without paying their mana cost. Let me say that again. You may play lands and cast spells from among cards exiled this way without paying their mana cost. So if you have 10 cards in hand, you can pay 7, discard your hand, and just play the top 10 cards of your opponent's library. Not sure what they are, but they're yours now. Like, Siphon Insight, take a seat. This is like, yeah, this is nuts. That said, I'm probably gonna run this in the same deck as Siphon Insight, let's be fair. But still, like, it's absolutely insane. I think in Dimir decks where you're drawing a lot of cards anyway, where you do want to be leveraging your opponent's stuff, this is going to be fantastic. Like, straight up fantastic. Like, it supports like a mono black or Rakdos aggro shell really, really well with that first ability, because it just helps you refill your hand and just keep going. And if that's all you get out of this card, it's still good. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're playing a more controlling game, you might be able to gain a couple of cards throughout the course of the game by getting a couple cracks in. Great. And then once you have once you have access to that ability, you can just rip it, and if you can hit a decent number off that, unless your opponent has some way to counter it, like, which this is an activated ability, so those are notoriously difficult to counter, all of a sudden, you just get a huge chunk of their library for free. That's nuts. Absolutely nuts. And you're also casting them. So if you have cards that have like ETBs, cast triggers, those types of things, you get all of that. I think this is fantastic. Like, straight up fantastic. I can't wait to get my hands on this. I'm going to use it in so many different things. So many different things. Like, yeah, I'm definitely, this is the one to beat for me. As far as like cards in Brothers War that I'm excited to build around, this is number one. I can't wait. And I think we are going to see it in competitive formats too. I really do. Because, like, think about it. If you hit Gix on 3, so you can hit like Evolve Sleeper on 1, Tenacious Underdog on 2, Gix on 3, Sheldred on 4. Perfect, like, nut draw curve. But still, if you have that, you're attacking with a lot of the cheap creatures anyway. Some of them are getting through. Gix is drawing you a ton of cards. If you have Sheldred down, you're gaining life for every card drawn. So it's a net positive of 1 life. Like, that's insane. And then if you do manage to somehow get to 7 mana, you might just be able to win the game if you're getting land flooded or something. Like, it's just, this card's great. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Fortunately, it doesn't have ward or anything like that, so it is easy to remove. But notably, it's a 3/3, so it does dodge cut down. That's very meaningful. It's very meaningful. Yeah, dodge is cut down. It's also a 3 casting cost. So if your opponent needs, in older formats, if your opponent wants to get rid of this with a fatal push, they need to trigger Revolt. So that's kind of cool too. Yeah, great card. I'm super stoked for this one. All right, and our last card that we're going to be talking about today, Feldon, Ranam Excavator. This is a 2/2 haste for 1 and a red. Human Artificer. It's legendary, of course, because Feldon's, you know, the legendary dude. Feldon, Ronin Excavator can't block. Okay. And then whenever Feldon is dealt damage, exile that many cards from the top of your library. Choose one of them. Until the end of your next turn, you may play that card. So you straight up draw cards just by Feldon taking damage. So if you have like Cinderclasm style effects, or like if you're really old school, Pestilence style effects that deal like 1 damage to everything, just draws you a card. Like, it's an impulsive draw in like red style, but still, it's the end of the next turn, so you have plenty of time to work with it. So that's nice. But then also, if you're attacking with it, and your opponent is chump blocking. If your opponent, like, if you're forcing your opponent to block it, that's pretty cool because, like, yeah, you're drawing cards. Even if they kill it, even if they kill Feldon, you're at least picking a card of 2 that you can then just get for free the next turn. So red cards like this that just fill your hand up while providing pressure on the board is really good. 2/2 haste for 2 is where you want to be anyway. I think this is going to be another staple in red aggro decks. I seriously do. I can totally see a world in which it's Phoenix Chick on 1, or Kumano faces Kakazan on 1 into Feldon on 2. It would enter with a +++ counter on it. Crash it in as a 3/3 with that ability. Your opponent's not going to want to block it, because if they do, even if they successfully block it and prevent the 3 damage, they're giving you cards. Like, so it's one of those things. When Feldon attacks, your opponent is kind of in a pickle, no matter what they do. Like, to be honest, this is going to eat straight kill spells a lot. Like, but even then, if your opponent's on red and they want to kill it with like a lightning strike, you still get a card. So, like, not bad. Not bad at all. I think this card's really good. It's just super efficient, super aggressive, low to the ground, does the thing. Perfect. Yeah, Phoenix Chick or Kumano faces Kakadon, Feldon, and then like Squee or the Stormseeker. I can totally see a world where red aggro is totally viable with that kind of a setup. Or Swiftspear. Swiftspear could be in the mix too, depending on how much burn you're running. Anyway, good stuff. I think I'm excited for Brothers War. This is gonna be good. It's gonna be real good. And it's also, I've been recording this for half an hour. I've no doubt more spoilers have dropped. Stay tuned for those. I'll be getting more in-depth breakdowns about other Brothers War spoilers as they come out. So keep an eye out to the channel. If you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button. Hit the subscribe button specifically so you can see when the next video drops. And yeah, looking forward to it. So thank you so much. I'll catch you on the next one.